Welcome to history. We're going to start with the Midwest region and review North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and still Michigan. All right, let's do it again more quickly. North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. All right, I'm going to pull that down. For the quiz that you just took, you had to know both the Northeast and the Southeast region, and it will also again be on the next quiz that you take after this distance learning, and it will be on the test that you'll take at the end of that same week once we get back from distance learning. All right, so you still need to know this very, very well to be quizzed on it and then tested on it for the test. So, Maine, whoops, let me put a few more, hold that in place. Okay, try again. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. Somebody that did not know this one. Massachusetts, and this is New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. And then once we get over here, this is West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Arkansas. All right, let's do all those one more time. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky. All right, and we will keep reviewing those. Now, we did not read in our books on Wednesday when we took the quiz, so we're going to start where we should have started on that day, and we're going to read what we should have read that day, plus what we're going to read today. So we're going to start on page 174, and we're going to read quite a bit. We're going to be reading about two men, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. We're going to begin with Meriwether Lewis. Meriwether Lewis's family. Just months after Meriwether Lewis was born in Virginia in 1774, the colonists were battling the British in the War for Independence. Homes and plantations all around were being burned by the British. But little Meriwether's home was not harmed. The British officers decided to live in Meriwether's home during the war. Not only was Meriwether surrounded by the enemy during his early years, but he also was neighbors with the well-known Thomas Jefferson. When Meriwether was only 5 years old, his father died. Little Meriwether became the owner of his family's plantation, called Locust Hill. Of course, the 5-year-old could not take care of the plantation himself. His uncle helped manage the plantation until Meriwether was old enough to care for it himself. All right, before we turn the page, let's go ahead and look at the important words. Okay, that first word is militia. It is not militia. It is militia. Make sure you understand that is militia. What is a militia? A group of volunteers to assist a regular army in an emergency. Right, now let's go down to important names, starting with Meriwether Lewis, the assistant to President Thomas Jefferson, who was sent to explore the Louisiana Territory. William Clark, the friend and former soldier Meriwether Lewis chose to co-lead the expedition to the Louisiana Territory. Corps of Discovery, the group of men assigned to explore the Louisiana Territory. Sacagawea, the Shoshone Indian woman who became a guide and translator for Lewis and Clark. Shoshone Indians Sacagawea's tribe, who were known as the first group of northern Native Americans to have horses in the Midwest. And Pomp, or Pompey, the nickname given by William Clark to Sacagawea's son. All right, now you may turn the page. But Meriwether did not stay at his plantation. His mother married again, and his stepfather moved the family to Georgia when Meriwether was 9 years old. Meriwether enjoyed exploring the land around his new home and learning to hunt. He was even given his father's hunting rifle. He loved the outdoors. He hunted deer, opossum, beaver, turkey, and even bear. He learned to be brave and to keep calm when danger was near. Back to Locust Hill. When Meriwether was 13 years old, he was sent back to Locust Hill to learn to manage his plantation. He learned about planting and harvesting crops such as wheat and corn. But Meriwether was not satisfied with managing his plantation. He wanted much more out of life. Right now we're going to read the important places before we go on. All right, so Louisiana Territory, the land bought from France in the Louisiana Purchase. And you can see it there on that map. That whole orange area is what was called the Louisiana Territory. Right, so it was part of Louisiana, but not even all of it, and then a bunch of states that weren't even considered states yet. Bitterroot Mountains, a western mountain chain with highest peaks around 10,000 feet, and then Fort Clatsop, the camp of Lewis and Clark's expedition near the Columbia River. All right, you can see the Columbia River on that map, I think. Nope, but you can see the Bitterroot Mountains. I can see Fort Clatsop. I'm not sure that they labeled the Columbia River on this map. But you just have to know the Columbia River would be near that. So I'm pretty sure we'll see that on one of our maps eventually. Land farm map that we have. Can we look at that again? All right, top of the next page, adventure. Meriwether Lewis volunteered to become part of the Virginia militia. Remember what a militia was? It was a group of volunteers to assist a regular army in an emergency. So Meriwether Lewis volunteered to become part of the Virginia militia and later joined the U.S. Army. During his time in the Army, he became good friends with his commanding officer, William Clark. Both men were hard workers and fine soldiers. When Thomas Jefferson was elected President of the United States, remember he was the third President of the United States, he began to look for an assistant. He remembered his neighbor, Meriwether Lewis. He thought of the adventurous boy he once knew, but also of the fine soldier Meriwether Lewis had become. President Jefferson asked him to be his private secretary and live in the newly built President's Mansion. Meriwether Lewis was excited for this new adventure as the President's assistant. President Jefferson purchased a large piece of land from France. This land, called the Louisiana Territory, doubled the size of the United States. When the president needed someone to explore this new land, he decided to send Meriwether Lewis. Mr. Lewis began to learn things he would need to know for the trip: how to make a map, how to find waterways, and how to study plants and minerals. One of his teachers was Andrew Ellicott, the same man who hired Benjamin Banneker to help survey Washington, D.C. Meriwether Lewis knew he needed men he could trust to go with him on this trip. Who would he choose? He immediately thought of his army friend, William Clark. Turn the page. Now we're going to read about William Clark. William Clark's family. William Clark was born on his family's plantation in Virginia. 5 of his older brothers fought in the American War for Independence. After the war, when William was 14 years old, his family moved west to Kentucky to a new plantation called Mulberry Hill. William loved hearing his brothers talk about the war. He couldn't wait until he was old enough to become a soldier. William's brother George, who had been a general in the war, taught him how to survive in the wilderness. He showed William which plants were poisonous. William learned how to hunt for food and how to make a shelter. George also taught William about traveling by boat on rivers. When he was 19 years old, William Clark's dream to be in the military came true. While he was commander of a rifle company, one of his men was Meriwether Lewis. The 2 men became trusted friends, and they were excellent soldiers. After his time in the army was over, William Clark returned to Kentucky to manage his family's plantation, but his friendship with Meriwether Lewis was not over. Meriwether Lewis chooses William Clark. Carefully choose the men to accompany you, Meriwether. You will need good, honest, hard-working, strong men, President Jefferson instructed. We will call your group the Corps of Discovery. Notice you don't say the P in that word. It is pronounced Corps. In fact, you don't say the S either. Corps, the Corps of Discovery. Meriwether Lewis wrote a letter to his friend from Army days, William Clark, and asked him to help lead the group. He knew that one man alone should not be responsible for such an important task. William Clark agreed. He wrote back, "My friend, I join you with hand and heart." The two men would soon be back together again, making the most important trip of their lives. Other men were chosen who were young and strong. They would need to carry heavy loads, pack and unpack the boats, hunt, build shelters, and much more. As plans for the trip got underway, Lewis began to make a list of things to pack. It probably included things like, I'm going to have to get my little trusty camera out so I can see these words. They are just much too tiny for me to read. All right. Equipment. Survey equipment, guns, axes, rope, items for explorers, medicine, clothes, socks, blankets, food, jerky, okay, so that's a dried meat, coffee, sugar, beans, and gifts to trade. That would be with the Native Americans, beads, ribbons, kettles, scissors. The list grew longer and longer with all the supplies they would need. Lewis and Clark would also need paper for maps and journals. They would need to write about what they saw and make a map to show President Jefferson and all Americans what the West looked like. Unlike today, there were no roads to follow. The most common way of traveling long distances was along rivers or streams. Soon all the items were packed and the boats were loaded. The men were ready to begin. All right, let's look at this modern marvels to compare what they did then with today. Imagine you are a member of the Lewis and Clark expedition. You wake up in the morning at your campsite and start heading west. You come to a dark forest and lose sight of the mountains and the river landmarks that help you know where you are. You are in charge of directions, but how can you know for sure which way is correct? Like Lewis and Clark, you would use a compass. A compass contains a small magnetized needle that always points north no matter where you are on Earth. As long as you know where north is, you can travel in any direction. Lewis and Clark also used the sextant and octant, which told them latitude and longitude. Part of their mission was to use these instruments and many others to create maps of what the frontier looked like. The instruments were very expensive and did not work very well compared to today's standards. Today, we can use Global Positioning System, GPS, to find directions. A satellite above Earth identifies your location information and provides maps and accurate directions to anywhere in the world, whether walking, driving, flying, or sailing. All right, we're just going to do the comprehension check on the next page, and then that's where we'll start next time we read. What is a group of volunteers who help an army? Militia, that would be letter E, militia. The land that doubled the size of the United States. Did you think of Louisiana Territory? Letter D, Louisiana Territory. The journey taken by a group of people for exploration. That would be expedition. We've already had that in one of our testing so far. Expedition, a journey taken by a group of people for exploration. Expedition, letter B. The name of the group that would explore the Louisiana Territory. Corps of Discovery. Remember that C-O-R-P-S is pronounced Corps. Corps of Discovery. And the most common way of traveling long distances in early America, that would be by rivers and by streams. All right. don't forget your reading is to read your book report book. Right? And I'll see you again tomorrow.